Yup, that's me. And that's my poo. I'm Ming Tan, chef, restaurateur,
This is for Oktoberfest also, is it?
and TV host.
Alright, Winnie, we have our ingredients laid out here.
And here I am, getting ready to mail off my poo.
Wonder who's gonna receive this and process my shit.
What brought me here? Well, I am a big believer in the transformative power of food.
Stress relieving smoothie bowl.
How we farm,
So this is what you put into the center of the popia.
manufacture, and eat doesn't just affect our waistlines.
Allow that kind of intimacy. You have to talk because you want to ask, pass me that.
So I've embarked on a new journey to discover how food can change the world. In this episode,
It's not very clean, but oh my goodness, I removed the fish brain.
I uncover the secrets behind how we can eat to manage the most prevalent chronic diseases of our time.
I'm able to manipulate the taste, and then we are able to help the people who, if they have hypertension.
Can food take the place of medicine?
The dietitian, the cardiologist, doctors were looking at this going, this is an incredible change.
Singapore's National Population Health Survey results have just been released. Done every year, they detail and reveal the health status of the population. The 2020 results are worrying.
It's a 185-page document. And this is what the 2020 results show.
The prevalence of chronic disease has increased in Singapore residents over the last 3 years. For diabetes in 2017, 8.8% to 9.5% in 2020. For high blood cholesterol, 35.5% to 39.1%. And lastly, for high blood pressure, from 24.2% to 35.5%. In fact, a quarter of all Singaporeans aged 40 and above have at least one of these 4 chronic diseases: diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and stroke.
If you have a chronic condition, you probably manage it with medicine. But in recent years, experts have found that you can manage some chronic conditions, and in some cases even promote the reversal of them, by carefully choosing what you eat and how you eat it.
Now, people will often tell you you are what you eat, when in actual fact, you are what you sheet. Let me show you what I mean.
This is a snapshot of my insides. My poo provides a window into what's known as the gut microbiome. Think of your microbiome as a metropolis inside your intestines, teeming with billions upon billions of live bacteria. And just like with any big city, different bacteria have different jobs, carrying out specific functions in the gut to keep it healthy. So the composition of everyone's microbiome is different. For example, you may have more firefighters, whilst I may have more bakers.
Now, the shitty part of all of this is, in order to find out what's inside your gut, you need to examine what comes out of the gut. So a stool test is like a hot, steaming dump of information. A census, essentially, of everything that's swimming around inside of you.
This is Matt Daly.
Thank you for your time today.
Now, several months ago, he sent his poo in for testing and received a report which detailed the state of his microbiome at that point. Since then, the 52-year-old with an engineering background has decided to change what he eats every day.
Matt, give me a bit of a snapshot. Prior to making this change, what was your diet like?
I didn't have a routine with regard to my diet. Just eat fast and keep working and working and working.
This is what Matt's diet used to consist of. Lots of pastas, pizzas, soft drinks, burgers, and fried chicken.
I was exhausted all the time. I would wake up at 2, 3 and not be able to get back to sleep. Finding it hard to focus, mood changes. I realised that there were problems. I had extremely high cholesterol, I had high glucose levels. I realised after quite a bit of research, your gut and your microbiome impacts so much in your body. There's a significant amount of things you can do to change your gut biome. And I'm an engineer, so fundamental principles, you can't manage what you can't measure. So I decided to go down the path of getting tested and measuring it and then seeing what the changes are.
It's a very scientific approach. Right, I see a lovely plate of food here. This is colorful, I'm seeing protein, a little bit of starch. Is this what you've been eating recently?
This is what I've been eating while I was on the diet. After getting the first stool test, I had a dietitian draw up a pretty strict diet based on my gut biome, what I was missing.
The diet Matt was given consisted of lots of dietary fiber, at least 400 grams of fruits and vegetables a day. He was also instructed to choose whole grains as much as possible, to limit his intake of red meats to less than 350 grams per week, and avoid processed fatty and salty foods. Now, this is not exactly groundbreaking stuff, but yet...
I did a full blood test again. Glucose changed and cholesterol changed significantly.
Fasting blood glucose levels are a diagnostic criteria for diabetes. Pre-diet, Matt's glucose level was borderline diabetic at 127 milligrams per deciliter. It dropped to 96 after his diet, while his cholesterol level went from 266, well over the desirable benchmark of 200, down to 139.
It was shockingly eye-opening to me, the small period of time. We're only talking 4 months here.
Why did you not initially, upon seeing these numbers, go down the route of treatment with medication?
Previously, I did go down the route of trying to take drugs. And no question, it fixes the problem temporarily, but it comes back.
Conclusively, this change that you've made recently and eating better based on these recommendations has had a much larger effect than any of your medications and treatments you've had before.
I am shocked at the amount of difference. The dietitian, the cardiologist, the doctors were looking at this going, this is an incredible change.
To check exactly how his diet has changed his gut microbiome, Matt also went for a second stool test. And if you recall, I too had my poo sent for testing several weeks ago, and my results are out today, along with Matt's. So we're heading down together to meet the scientists behind all this shitty business. The science of studying your gut has really taken off over the past few decades. The number of studies mentioning microbiome or microbiota in their title or abstract grew from just 11 in 1980 to over 13,000 in 2018. And almost any disease you can think of, from diabetes, liver disease, to cancer, has purported links with the microbiome. The problem is, research has thus far been focused mostly on Western populations. But the newly set up Asian Microbiome Library, or AMLE for short, wants to bridge that gap. It is calling for all Singaporeans to donate their poo so that our microbiomes may be better studied and researched. Dr. Sai Shreyas Sundaraju is a key part of these research efforts and the custodian of all these flasks of feces.
The research on this is developing as we speak. What we've realized is that certain people with chronic diseases have a very unique microbiome signature. Certain bacterial species are responsible for certain diseases. Matt has had some phenomenal changes. So for example, you look at the color in purple, so that's your firmicutes, which is a large classification of bacteria. Matt's firmicutes has actually increased. So we know that certain bacteria in this phyla are responsible for maintaining butyrate levels. Butyrates are basically short-chain fatty acids. And his butyrate production has actually increased quite a bit, which is really good.
If you remember, Matt was put on a high-fiber diet filled with lots of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Dr. Shreyas tells us that this likely fed the fiber-loving firmicutes, which are known to help the production of a molecule called butyrate. Butyrate may be responsible for lowering the rate of cholesterol uptake by the body. This could be one of the reasons for Matt's tremendously reduced cholesterol levels.
I've been putting this off, but now it's time for me to see with Dr. Shreyas what's not so good and what I should be improving. Give it to me straight.
Okay, so on the diversity front, there seems to be a bit of low diversity in your gut microbiome.
Why is diversity in the gut so important?
Diversity in the gut is important because many different functions are carried out by different types of bacteria. So the more diverse it is, there is a lot more chances that important functions that are not performed by your body are carried out by these bacteria. So low diversity is actually associated with many different neurodegenerative diseases, certain autoimmune diseases, and even things like obesity, frailty. So when we sequence individuals who have certain diseases, we find that their diversity is very low. We're not sure why exactly. Is it caused by the disease, or does this cause the disease? These are questions that we are asking as well.
So I'm really interested in finding out what changes in the diet I need to make for myself. Can you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, I think this is a perfect time to discuss this over a cup of coffee, which is in reasonable quantities good for your microbiome.
Let's do it. All right, so now at the food section, I'm looking at these ingredients here, and I'm very interested to know why these things specifically, and these are tailored to me, right?
Yeah, Ming, so if we can compare yours with Matt's, for example, right? So we're both in the same section. Can you see the difference in what Matt has been suggested to eat and what you've been suggested to eat?
Everything is slightly different. There's some fermented stuff, the oolong tea, the natto, vegetables all around, fruits as well, fatty fish. But then this is a different profile altogether.
Because you both are different. This is the set that we think will best serve your microbiome. But if you notice, right, apart from the vegetables, one key feature is that it is rich in fermented foods. So fermented foods are a great source of probiotic, beneficial bacteria, and it should be added into your diet on a regular, frequent basis.
Now that I know what makes up my gut microbiome, I want to do a deep dive into these probiotic and fermented foods that I've been recommended. I wonder, can they prevent the onset of chronic disease? Because of their role in infections and disease, we generally believe that bacteria are bad. Most bacteria, however, are actually good guys, performing essential functions that keep the gut healthy.
I'd like more of these good guys in my gut, so I'm gonna grow them myself.
Fermenting your own kombucha has become extremely popular because of its litany of health benefits, especially the promise of beneficial bacteria. And making this popular fermented tea drink only requires 4 ingredients: tea, water, sugar, and this weird membrane called a SCOBY, which stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast. The SCOBY is a hotel that houses live bacteria and yeast.
So during the process of fermenting kombucha, the bacteria from the SCOBY consume and break down the sugars in the tea. As this happens, they grow and multiply, giving rise to increased concentrations of good bacteria inside the fermented kombucha.
But kombucha isn't the only trending fermented food. The global market for fermented foods is huge, valued at more than $565 billion in 2019. Winnie Ong has been practicing the art of fermentation for more than 15 years now.
Good morning, Winnie!
Hey, morning, Ming.
Hello!
How are you?
And I'm bringing her my own homemade kombucha to see if it's up to scratch.
I understand you are the expert in all things fermented, so I'd like you to have a taste of this and tell me how he's going.
Is it okay if I get a whiff of your baby?
Yeah, yes. Please.
Okay.
That didn't seem encouraging. She was like, okay. There was no affirmative, it was just a...
Shall we just give this a go?
Okay.
Yep. Cheers. I would say that this is actually a pretty tasty brew, Ming.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I have a lot of questions about the world of fermentation, but I also see you set up a whole bunch of stuff.
You got me at a good time because I'm in the middle of preparing for kimchi. So if it's okay, would you like to join me?
Yeah, I think we can work and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
My first question is fermented foods, kombucha, and we're making kimchi right now. I've heard they are very good for you. How true is that?
Fermented foods, like for example kimchi and kombucha, make foods a lot more bioavailable to you.
Bioavailable, what are you referring to here?
So bioavailability is basically the exact same food, but you're able to extract more nutrients out of it. So Ming, did you know that 1 cup of raw cabbage has about 20 mg of vitamin C? But by pure fermentation into something as simple as sauerkraut, the vitamin C content skyrockets to 600 mg. We're looking at a 30-fold increase in vitamin C purely because of fermentation alone.
And I'm assuming this increase in bioavailability is good for you.
Yes. For example, there are some nutrients that our body cannot fully absorb even from plain old food digestion. So one thing about fermentation is that it actually kicks up the digestion process for you already. So by taking foods that are fermented, you are able to increase mineral absorption rate and you are able to increase the vitamin C content that you actually do get from foods as well.
All right, so that's bioavailability. What about the effect it has on your gut?
With chronic conditions, it's usually caused by symptoms of inflammation. And one thing about the fermentation process is that the bacteria actually digest starches and sugars into things that are anti-inflammatory.
But from kombucha to kimchi, to yogurt and ever-popular probiotic drinks, there are so many fermented foods to choose from. And all of them contain different types of live bacteria or probiotics. How do I know which are the best of the lot?
Prof. Lee.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm bringing all the probiotic foods I can find to microbiologist Professor Lee Yuan Kun.
Some of this. Lee? This stuff. I brought all these items here and I'd like to ask, which of these should I take?
Whether the microbe in here is going to be beneficial to us depends on several factors.
Okay.
First of all, it must be able to survive in my intestinal tract, to colonize for a short times. So we can imagine that microbes which couldn't tolerate my gut's condition, they will just pass out. So it must be able to stay for a while, first of all.
Okay.
Then it must be talkative. What it simply means is that inside my intestinal tract must be able to interact, communicate, crosstalk to me in order to elicit a certain effect. And hopefully the effect is beneficial.
I see, but a lot of that's dependent on a person, right?
Yes. The general impression is that if they are probiotic, they all must be good to me. But the reality is that actually you really can't tell It all depends on the several things. First of all, what kind of lactobacillus is that? Is that lactobacillus for Eskimos or lactobacillus for Singaporeans? Simple reason is that their gut bacteria are different from mine, and they eat different things. They eat polar bear, eat mee siam, so this is very different. So they can interact with this, and then they can survive in different kind of conditions.
I see. So sometimes there just isn't going to be a beneficial result to an individual, even if they're consuming a probiotic.
Exactly. Even the cream probiotic, and they are in fact probiotic to you, but may not be a probiotic to me. I'm not sure what you heard of the idea of personalized nutrition or precision medicine to understand the specific interaction between probiotic and me. So I have any problem, I will go specifically to this particular strain of probiotic that may cure the problems. That is what we eventually aim at.
Personalized nutrition, using probiotics specific to you. But it's not just what we eat that matters to our health. Scientists have also begun to look at how we eat as a means to keep chronic diseases at bay.
And they began to experiment with this.
The ubiquitous and humble Hainanese chicken rice. My producers haven't told me anything about what we're doing here today, except that I'm supposed to fast overnight for 12 hours, come here,
What does that do?
and eat this bowl of rice. And that I'm to do it again the next day, with a spoon this time round.
So to find out why my producers had put me on such a bland diet for the last 2 days, and what that mysterious looking plastic circle was on my arm, I've been given this nondescript graph, right? And I've come to the A-Star Singapore Institute for Food and Biotechnology Innovation, where I'm told I will find some answers from one Prof. Jayakumar Henry. Prof, so I've been given this graph, right? And apparently I took some readings off a monitor I had on my arm. I need you to help me understand what's going on with these lines here.
Right. Two very important points. The first is that you ate the same variety of rice, the same cooking conditions,
Same.
the same amount of water to rice ratio,
Exactly the
and you get two different curves on your postprandial or post-digestive glycemia. So you see here, with the chopstick, your glucose level is almost half of what it was when you used your spoon. What is happening is a very simple phenomenon. With your spoon, you're eating, gobbling away, metaphorically, about 8 to 10 grams of rice. Now, in contrast, when you ate your rice with a chopstick, by definition, you only could take about 3 to 4 grams of rice per mouthful.
Well, that's how you eat with chopsticks, right?
Absolutely.
You take a small amount.
Absolutely. When you eat rice in small portions, you chew or masticate the rice for a smaller period of time. And therefore, when you chew for a smaller period of time, you are breaking down the rice grains into large particles. In contrast, you're eating about 8 to 10 grams of rice with your spoon, and therefore you spend much longer in terms of the time taken to masticate the rice compared to the small amount of rice in the chopstick. So if you spend longer time chewing, then the rice particles will be much smaller in size, and what we call the surface to volume ratio is very different to what would be seen in the chopstick. So remember, the rice eaten with the chopstick has larger particle size of rice grains, and the one with the spoon has got smaller.
Yes.
Now, as soon as it gets swallowed up and into the gut, the enzyme called amylase that breaks down the starch comes into action.
Okay.
And you can imagine the enzyme like a predator.
Yeah.
And he's got more to eat in your spoon that got smaller particle size.
The surface area, he's got more areas to go in and break this down.
Absolutely. So then coming back to your pictogram now, you can see how eating the rice with the spoon has an incredible spike compared to eating the rice with a chopstick. The rice intuitively is high glycemic index, but to make it low, all you got to do is to use your quintessential chopstick. And that's exactly what you do in this part of the world.
Just change the way you eat.
The glycemic index, or GI of a food, tells you how quickly it can make your blood glucose rise after eating it. White rice generally has a high GI, which means it causes glucose levels to shoot up quickly. This is especially problematic for diabetic patients whose bodies have trouble bringing glucose levels down. But Prof. Jaya tells me he has something else to show me. And he wants to talk about it over lunch with one of his favorite dishes.
Thank you. I'm going to start eating this. Look at that chicken. Okay, I need to try the rice first.
Gorgeous. Are you enjoying it? But Ming, I've got to stop you on your tracks. Stop.
But I just put the chicken.
I'm afraid you have to put it back. It turns out that the way in which we sequence the food that we consume in a quintessential chicken rice has got enormous implications. What do I mean by that? If you eat the rice first, you get a huge spike in blood glucose. Whereas, if you eat the vegetable first, followed by the piece of chicken, and then the rice the last, you have a completely blunted blood glucose for the same meal. Now that's quite amazing.
Huge spikes in blood glucose can be dangerous. If such spikes persist over time, the body can lose its ability to lower blood glucose levels effectively. And that's when you develop diabetes.
So what is the science behind this, Prof?
Most vegetables contain a large amount of
Fiber.
dietary fiber. They also contain polyphenols. So the vegetable does two things. The fiber retard the progression of the starch digestion. Polyphenols binds to the starch, therefore reduces the risk of the enzyme breaking it down. Then comes your chicken.
Okay, the protein, right?
Absolutely. The protein, it enhances insulin secretion. Insulin is a very important hormone that promotes the absorption of glucose into your muscle, therefore less in your blood. So therefore the post-glucose response is much more blunted. In Asia, where we eat a predominantly starch-based diet,
Like chicken rice.
so the implications of all of this is that if you continuously eat a high GI meal or diet, it predisposes you to type 2 diabetes. And therefore, all of this science is trying to see how we can down-regulate your blood glucose, but also not prescribing people from eating what they want to eat. And that's what it's all about. How can we have our rice and eat it?
So it's not just what we eat that can help manage and prevent diabetes, but how we eat as well.
Prof. Jaya's eating hacks would be especially useful to people with diabetes and pre-diabetes. Now, on top of monitoring their blood glucose levels, this group of people also need to contend with issues like unexplained weight loss and frequent urination. But some diabetic patients, like Ming Tan, contend with a less known issue.
Hello.
Hey, morning, Glenn.
Good morning. I ordered breakfast already.
Hey, you've ordered breakfast already. Thank you so much. Glenn, that's quite a lot of soy sauce you put into your eggs,
because it's very plain, no taste. So I need to add more.
What do you mean it's very plain? Because you added quite a lot of,
Because
almost like
it's due to like diabetic, right? Yeah, I can't taste normal the food as in like it's very bland. Yeah.
And because it's bland, then you add more of these
Yeah,
flavors.
that's why.
The color difference between our eggs is very obvious and stark. Would you say that before your condition, your food got more unhealthy because of the amount of sugar and salt you had to add?
Yeah, correct. Then the doctor will tell me, you need to go on, ask me to skip that. And then I say, it's so meaningless to live, better go and die, better I tell you that. Everything 什么都不可以吃. I said, 假啦 like that, you know.
Studies have shown that diabetics like Glenn are more likely to develop taste disorders. That in turn urges some diabetics to increase their salt intake, putting them at risk for hypertension. But this special pair of chopsticks may be the panacea to their health woes.
Prof Yen, I see you've got some rice here. What are we about to experiment with today?
Yeah, I think we'll try to show you some of the new invention we have. Do you want to try the rice first?
Sure.
That's a normal rice. You can smell and you can taste it. Yeah.
Fragrant, medium grain Chinese rice.
Yeah.
Okay.
It tastes normal, right?
Yeah, okay, so that's just plain rice.
Do you want to try our new invention? Yeah, it's just a normal chopstick.
Just a normal pair of chopsticks, he says. So just
You can just eat, yeah.
Okay, here goes.
Try to really let a chopstick touch your tongue. Do you feel a bit different when you taste? I can give you some other things.
Okay, Prof has just done something else to this. The light color is now different. Another chopsticks worth of rice. That's not so nice. Okay, let me try and articulate what's happening here. With this pair of chopsticks that Prof Yen has brought in, my first bite was salty. Not salty all the way through, but the sensation of the rice on my tongue was salty. Then with the second thing that you did, bitter and not pleasant. It wasn't quite as nice.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Basically, right, this chopstick is a special design from our side. We try to use a microelectric current to stimulate on your taste bud.
You have electrocuted my tongue.
If you want to say so, yes, but it do nothing to your tongue because
yeah.
it's so minor.
Okay, so no
small,
damage
yeah.
at all?
Yeah.
In all my years of working with food, this is the first time I've had a pair of chopsticks give me the sensation that this rice is salty. Why did you create something like this?
Okay, so it got a lot of benefit. Bill, for example, we can talk about for healthcare. Now, a lot of people who, if they have a hypertension, they cannot eat something too salty. But how do you reduce the salt? So that's one way allow us try to see if I am able to manipulate the taste, and then we are able to help this type of people, allow them to have a better life. We are able to do 3 different tastes now. So just now I try to do a different type of switch because we can control the bitterness, sour, as well as the salty. 3 different tastes. You just change your microelectric current. We found out if you really want to eat something, the taste is not good enough. Because when you eat, you will try to see there's a color and then there's a smell. So we introduced a new product called Mocktail. So you can just do a small taste and then to see whether this cup is the same as a normal cup.
Okay, that tastes
Normal, right?
normal, yeah.
Yeah, the device we have. It's a high-tech device.
I am slightly nervous now.
I can give you some sort of lemonade first.
No way, you're gonna turn this into lemonade?
Now you can see a yellow color come out, and then can you smell it? And
Yeah,
please
that
drink
smells
it.
a little bit like...
Yeah. It's quite interesting, right?
I usually have a lot to say every time I put something in my mouth, but I'm trying to process this now. That was obviously different.
Yes. So just now when we start to do the lemonade, you will start to see a yellow color, allow you to think about something slightly sour. And after that, the smell come out, and then that will give you some sort of predetermination to think about what are you going to drink. And then after that, with the overlay on the taste, and then you will create a holistic experience.
I'm pleasantly surprised. This was a taste-altering experience, both with the pair of chopsticks as well as this glass. We know that what we eat and now how we eat can have an impact on your health and risk for disease. But what if I told you that your diet could also have an impact on your child's life many years down the road?
This is the African turquoise killifish. These tanks they're swimming around in may seem small, but having so much water to swim in is in fact a luxury for these fish. That's a 5-star hotel you're living in, buddy. In the wild, killifish live in harsh, rapidly changing habitats. Rain pools that only appear during the rainy season in East Africa. In these pools, they hatch, feed, become sexually mature, and reproduce, all within a span of a few months. By the time the rain pools dry up, they die. Their short lifespans make them the perfect candidate to study aging and age-related diseases.
On today's menu, killifish brain sashimi. Yeah, not really lah.
I'm dissecting this killifish for its brain in the name of science, and at the request of researcher Dr. Ko Tong Wei. He's basically a pro at it now, having done hundreds of such dissections since he started research on these fish in 2019.
All right. Jeng jeng.
It's not very clean, but oh my goodness, I removed the fish brain. We just went through this process of opening up this little animal and obtaining its brain. This brain, why is this so essential to the work that you do?
So right now we are studying the effect of dietary restriction on the brain.
What do you mean by dietary restrictions?
Dietary restriction, you can see as an umbrella term for many different kind of fasting methods.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting would fall under that umbrella. For the experiment we did, we were feeding the control fish 3 meals per day. Then for the dietary restriction fish, we fed them 1 meal a day.
With your observations so far, what have you been able to tell with restricting the killifish dietary intake?
What's interesting was for the fish with the restricted diet, it seems like a subset of genes expressed in a pattern that is actually more similar to young fish than old fish. It's sort of like they went back in time. A subset of genes that behave this way are expressed in a special cell type in the brain called the microglia.
Microglia.
Yeah, and the microglia are like the gardeners of the brain, nurturing and pruning.
Imagine that your brain is a garden, and that your brain cells or neurons are plants. Healthy neurons are represented by flowers, whilst unhealthy neurons are weeds. In a young brain, the microglia gardeners are precise. They prune the weeds but leave the flowers alone. When the brain and the fish age, however, these gardeners become less accurate. They cut away not just weeds, but perfectly healthy flowers as well. The garden becomes over-pruned, leading to neuroinflammation in the brain, which is associated with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. However, when the fish were put on dietary restriction, Dr. Ko observed that the microglia gardeners, even in old age, were precise, removing only the weeds and not the flowers.
Looking at these fish, I struggle to understand why what you study in them is applicable to like humans. How are you making these connections?
The cell types that make up the brain in the fish are quite similar to the cell types that make up our brain.
Means what happens to them as you're studying it will likely also happen to us.
Yeah.
So intermittent fasting might have an anti-aging effect on your brain cells, thereby preventing the onset of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease.
I've generally assumed that chronic diseases such as Parkinson's, heart disease, and diabetes all occur at the later stage of life as we get older. And rightfully so, because most patients with chronic disease are 65 years and older.
But there is now growing evidence that such diseases can originate from the influences you are exposed to at the very beginning of life.
I know that expectant mothers are very careful about the things they choose to eat, often taking advice passed down from generation to generation. Now, over the past 3 days, I've enlisted the help of 3 of these expectant mothers to document their day-to-day meals, so that we can understand a little bit better about what they choose to eat for themselves and their babies.
Some carbohydrates. This is what I'm having for breakfast. Wrap with cucumber, egg and tuna. The wrap is actually whole grain, so it's a healthier choice. And also a fruit, which is a pear, and also a cup of maternity milk.
Lunch I had chicken rice. Normally chicken rice there's cucumbers in it, which I won't consume because it's raw. We are consuming durian. It's because it helps increase the baby weight quite fast.
Food smoothie for today will be a white dragon fruit because it helps me to prevent constipation, especially during pregnancy. I try not to eat carbs to maintain my weight during my pregnancy. So I choose usually like 2 portions of protein and also 2 portions of vegetables.
So I'm bringing these food diaries from Pamela, Joey, and Krista to see Dr. Loy C. Ling, who's been studying the effects of a mother's diet on a child's health for the last 10 years.
Let me start with the Krista diet first. The meals actually is quite balanced and complete. Especially, she knows that she has type 1 diabetes. Therefore, she tried to incorporate whole grains food into her diet, which is actually very good in controlling her blood sugar levels.
I see. Okay, let's take a look at Pamela's diet.
Her diet is more fat-based and then carbohydrate-based.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of vegetables.
Yeah, during pregnancy, right, we have this condition known as the insulin resistance. So if there's lack of greens and lack of fiber, the blood sugar will be spiked up. This is actually quite bad to our health and also to the baby. Joey's afraid of gaining too much weight. Actually, it is definitely not advisable to avoid carbohydrates or trying to do any dieting during pregnancy because this will lead to the nutrient insufficiency to the mothers, which is quite dangerous to the baby. I would think that the better way is she can replace type of the carbohydrates by using those whole grains products.
How does this diet have repercussions on their offspring, as well as their offspring's propensity for chronic disease?
Research actually has been shown quite a promising evidence that how mothers eat during pregnancy could influence their child health, predisposing them to the higher risk of chronic diseases.
How does a mother's diet, for 9 months impact a child's life and their propensity for chronic disease when the child could grow up and, sort of live for 30, 40 years and have all sorts of health and lifestyle preferences themselves?
The most crucial part about this effect of maternal diet on subsequent child health is it could have a domino effect. So let's say this is the first domino. We start with the maternal diet. With a high sugar intake, there's a high chance of the mothers to develop gestational diabetes, which will have consequences on the baby. So the second domino would have the complications on the maternal health during pregnancy, where other than gestational diabetes, could also lead to hypertension, preeclampsia. If the mothers had a higher sugar consumption, actually in the womb itself, right, it could already started to shape the feeding behavior of the baby. When the mothers consume sugar, even in a moderate amount, it can stimulate the fetus brain to release dopamine. This compound is related to the pleasure feeling and also the reward. It is linked up with the sweet taste preference in the baby.
So if the mother is craving sweet things and she's just like spamming all these sweet foods, This is basically going to make the child want to eat sweet foods as the child grows up.
Yeah, exactly. Sugar contributes to the calorie intake, higher risk of obesity, and then this is where the chronic disease tend to develop earlier and earlier.
So I'm worried now because are you done with the dominoes, or are there more domino pieces to put down?
Yeah, there's more dominoes. So just now we
my
thought
goodness.
if the mothers had a diabetes during a pregnancy, after the delivery, gestational diabetes will go off.
It's temporary.
But after 4 to 5 years, right, this mother, they had 11 to 12 times risk of developing diabetes. So this matter of the 4th dominoes. So if let's say this mother is planning for next baby, right?
Yeah.
Because the mother is starting out with a diabetes condition, this creates an adverse environment, we say that, to the fetus development. Yeah.
Okay, oh dear, she's reaching for the box again. That means one more domino, guys.
Yeah, so we have this child, right?
Yeah.
So the child, right, you would have another child, isn't it? These epigenetic changes, there's a possibility for them to transmit it to their future child, and then this is where the chronic disease keep on repeating and increasing in our society.
So if pregnant women overload on sugary snacks now, they could potentially predispose not just themselves, but their children and even their grandchildren to chronic conditions like diabetes and obesity. And so,
it's easy to target food as an issue of public health given its role in the rise of chronic disease here in Singapore. But armed with the knowledge of how to eat, what to eat, and when to eat it, we can unlock even more potential in food and use it to nourish ourselves, our children, and subsequent generations.